Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the Standing Policy Committee on Finance and Economic Development. I'm Councillor Jeff Wadi, I'm the committee's chairperson. With us this morning, we have Councillor Janice Lukes, Councillor Matt Allard, Councillor John Orlico. I'd like to welcome our new committee clerk. Welcome to Cape and Dillon. Welcome to Finance. Of course, we have our CFO, Tracy Graham, and a number of other members of the public service with us here this morning. Sounds like there's a find a friend going off here in the background. Okay. Councillor Lukes, would you move that the minutes of the meeting held on July 7, 2025 be taken as read and confirmed? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. I missed the line acknowledgement. Winnipeg is located in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 41st Nation in Treaty 3 territory. Okay, we have no delegations. We can go straight into reports. Number 1, major capital reporting schedule.
Okay, so joining us from the public service today is Rob Taylor, the director, and Danny Tooth, acting manager of major capital projects and assets and project management. This is Rob's first SPC finance meeting in his new role.
Welcome.
Thank you. Chair, councillors.
Good morning, councillors. So this is a pretty easy one to start you off today. So as you know, in March, we approved, or you approved, putting the schedule online. And the only reason we would come back if so today, the Lashmortia Twin Overpass project is being added and will be coming to the December meeting with its first report. Really all I have for you. If you have any questions?
Okay. Saw some pre-work starting there this fall, and happy to see they were able to finish that pre-work and get the speed limit back to 80 on Lashmortia because 60 was slowing things down a little bit. Okay. Any questions on this report? So we prepared to move this?
So moved.
Okay. Councillor Lukes, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Okay, South Winnipeg Rec.
Okay, now joining Rob is Brent Canuta.
Brent.
So this is our quarterly report on the South Winnipeg Recreation Campus. I was previously the manager of major capital projects oversight, so I was here when it got initiated 5 years ago. But lots has happened in that time, so I'm going to hand it over to Brent to kind of give us an update of what's taken place in the last quarter.
Good morning. This is report number 13. Just some key highlights to open. The project is now in the final stages of design and tendering expected later this year. The most recent cost estimate indicated that the recreation center is on budget with respect to the council approved funding. And finally, construction of the vocational wing addition to Pembina Trails Collegiate, which the city is building as part of this project, is on schedule and on budget. For funding highlights, the forecasted total project cost is currently $129.6 million. This is based on a recent Class 2 cost estimate that we've received, while the approved budget remains at $118.7 million. As I said, however, the recreation center component is on budget, and the difference in $11 million approximately is related to the child care center and the vocational wing, which the city is not funding. It's the province of Manitoba. And so the recreation center component is on budget at an estimated cost of $94 million. And that's identified in the breakdown on page 7 in the funding forecast table. For financial details, the approved contracts and contract costs are provided in table 1. They've been updated to reflect expenditures to the reporting period. Those total $15.9 million. Those are mostly attributable to the construction costs for the vocational wing. And contract adjustments total $741,000 to date. Single contract was awarded in this time period. That was to the Winnipeg Arts Council. That was for a cost of $250,000. For schedule, there are no schedule changes known or forecast at the present time. Project is expected to conclude with new facilities being completed at the end of 2027. And just to carry our risk statement, we have no new risks identified in the project. However, the trade tariffs continue to evolve, but are very difficult to quantify. Some minor tariff increases have been experienced in other projects, However, these monetary costs are generally unconfirmed until goods and materials cross the border and duties are assigned and calculated as required. So for subsequent events after the report period end date, that's June 30th, there was a summary of public feedback from the March 22nd open house. That's been posted to the Cities Engage website that can be found online, and that happened on July 15th. As I said, the project is now in the final stages of detailed design. We're reviewing final drawings with the consultant at this time. And very recently, last week, a request for qualification, short list of top qualified contractors to build the rec campus was issued September 9th. That will be followed by a construction tender, which is planned for November. And final note, construction of the vocational wing addition, the Pembina Trails Collegiate, is approximately 65% complete. That work is going well, and it's on schedule to be substantially complete January, and then totally performed in March next year. My update for today. Any questions? Answering questions.
You're saying the RFQ period opened or closed on the 9th?
It just opened.
Just opened
Yeah, it'll be posted for approximately 1 month.
for 1 month?
When do you expect the tenders to come in?
I'm sorry.
I'm curious about the tenders on the impact of tariffs or just construction inflation or whatever. When do you expect those numbers to start rolling in?
Well, the city has adopted language in our tender documents to manage tariff implications in process. CFO could speak to that probably in better detail. So we don't, unless costs are known at the time for some materials, say for instance, if tariffs have been established back to early this year, we could expect that contractors would build that into their price. However, we've seen a lot of uncertainty in other projects where related costs are being dealt with in process, like in contract. So having said that, though, the tariff impacts have been minimal today.
So just to clarify, what I'm hearing you say is the tenders will come in, and when will they start coming in? The tenders for these projects?
It should, well, we're hoping to post it in November. So it'll be out for about 6
sometime.
weeks, so probably December.
December, also probably all of January, February, March, somewhere in there, right? You'll come back to council with an updated how the tenders went.
We planning to turn an report early in the year, next year, and bring a work report forward.
Yes, my worry still remains is, and you said, as we go, we'll just as well, usually it's not going down the price as we go. So I don't want to be going in with any project, but not, picking on this one, where we all of a sudden tender it, we're moving forward. Now we're locked in, we have to do it pretty well. And then all of a sudden we have to, in the process, put a whole bunch more money into it because our numbers are off. Is that something I should be worried about?
No, what the approach is that we build a contingency into the total project cost that we advance to council for approval. So
Fair enough.
that's the approach that's worked well.
Well, then we'll see what happens. I'm not going to hold it anything, but you're just saying you're confident we'll be okay. But we'll see. Yeah.
As best I can.
As best you
As
can.
confident as you can be in this time.
Confident you can be. That's fair. That's fair.
Unless the world stops turning
Who knows?
later this year.
Better not, because that's fine. Thank you very much for the answer.
Okay. Councilor Lukes?
Thank you. Thanks for the report. So I just want to be clear now on what the actual cost for the childcare facility is. So the amended budget now is 24.7, is that correct? For the,
Yes,
is that's for both of them or?
correct. That would be for both the non-civic facilities.
For the vocational and the childcare?
Yes.
And
That's-
so,
That's the budget that's currently approved, like with the ICE agreements and the funding arrangements that are currently in place. But however, we are anticipating, like there is a commitment in place to fund differences But we expect that once we get pre-tender and tender results back, that the province will amend their budget accordingly.
So this 11 million, is that included in the 20, that's not included in the 24.7?
No, it's not. It's over and above essentially.
Right. So the vocational facility is almost done. What did that come in at?
Like,
Where, it's
Yeah.
not really in here.
yeah, offhand, the tender was at approximately 17 million.
Okay. Do you think you could come back in the next report and include a breakdown of like what the vocational facility final cost was?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, with director's agreement, we could provide you with the current contract costs by email later.
Sure, but I would like it in the report too.
Of course. Yeah.
And then if you could break it down to where you're at with the childcare facility too. Like you won't know because it won't be finalized, I guess.
Yeah, it's still speculation, you know,
Right.
until even the pre-tender estimate comes with uncertainties, but
Right.
we've cash flowed everything through a basis of estimate, which is how we manage the total project cost.
So that's how you assume that it's another 11 million? Is that how you assume that? Okay, so sure. So maybe work that into the report where you're at on that and then what's like separate it out. So we understand what the vocational school ends up costing and what the estimated is as we proceed for the childcare.
Yes, and in the next report, we'll have, that much further along, we'll be able to provide more accurate information on the costing breakout.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, through you, the public service, I think these are in line with my questions last time we talked about this. Well, one is the agreement of the province in writing to our deferred maintenance costs included in the agreement.
Those will be dealt with by an operating capital request in the next capital budget year, I believe. Yeah, they haven't been established yet.
Okay, so we don't know right now what that's gonna look like and if the province will or will not provide deferred maintenance payments as part of their lease or whatever the arrangement is.
I can't speak to that part, but I do know that Community Services Department and Municipal Accommodations are reviewing, or trying to anticipate what the workload will be to operate and maintain the civic component. And, there will be some shared costs for recycling garbage collection as the childcare center is attached to the rec center. So those things are being reviewed in the background and will be finalized.
Yeah, I guess I'm fast forwarding 30 years where the asset's at end of life or whatever. What is the life of an asset like this? Theoretically, like,
Well,
Winnipeg?
Yeah, I mean, it's really not, honestly, this is a.
well, there's what we say is end of life, and it's like that's running at 30 more years after that.
zero.
Yeah,
The capital analysis is 30 years, but in real terms, this is a 50+ year, so.
okay. I don't like how we have that in writing and in practice. Okay, so if it is a 30-year facility, there's deferred maintenance on that. I'm thinking about the case of the province hires 5 police officers, and then that's great for 5 years, and then for the next 20 years, the city funds those 5 police officers, for example. So same goes for buildings and deferred maintenance, I presume, unless it's negotiated.
I believe that, in our department, the asset management perspective of our asset portfolio is being reviewed and refined to deal with deferred maintenance and asking for capital in future years to cover not only operating and maintenance, but investment into the building to, renew equipment systems so that, we're trying to better ourselves and position ourselves better in the future to deal with.
Well, we did have that report, the report from about 15 years ago that we're supposed to be setting this aside. What's it called?
Oh, like a reserve?
Yeah, we've been
Yeah.
Okay,
supposed to be.
Congratulations to Jervis.
We're also not supposed to be subsidizing permits, but
okay, I'll leave my questions. I'm public services aware that I have these questions. I've heard it in general. Thank you.
So do you require a more formal direction to separate out the, you're good, just the next version, go for it. Well, next quarter, we'll get more details, separating out the, vocational school. Okay.
Yeah, I just do want to put it on the record. I haven't written in a letter to the editor or an editorial yet. I'm really getting fed up of people, you know, saying that Southwest Winnipeg doesn't need a rec campus. No one drives around there and they don't understand that we've got more people there than the city of Brandon. And we don't have anywhere, we don't have any facility. The facility we do have is used for daycare all day at Waverly Heights Community Center. So I'm holding back from writing a letter to the editor to help clarify this for many, many people that don't seem to understand the population out there. And I did not support the 20-year plan that GCWCC, whatever, put forward, because I still believe once this thing is built, everyone's going to be very, you know, upset and mad, but no one wants to reduce older community centers and amalgamate or put them into one. So,
no, not true.
well-
We did.
very few out of, there's
That was
still
part of Ross.
61.
Charles was doing it.
I just add, there's
Still
some,
61, but anyways, I just want to put that on the record.
Fair enough. $94 million out of swimming pool seems a little rich, but okay,
Very much, yes. Okay, I'll move the report.
thank you. So
Oh.
you're moving it. Okay, Councillor Lukes, thank you. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Ward 3, St. Mattel over the red.
Okay, so
Future neighborhood council.
joining us to talk about this report are Jason Ruby, the finance manager, and Andrew Condon, the manager of engineering from Public Works.
Hello, everybody.
In our spot.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Go
Take it
for it.
away.
This is the 11th quarterly update for the St. Patel Bridge over the Red River rehabilitation for period ending June 30th, 2025. Expenditures to the period ending June 30th, 2025 total 54,892,000 and change, with the total budget anticipated to be 59,874,000. The majority of the works for this project were completed in 2024, with the balance of works in 2025 as follows: completion of girder coatings, landscaping works, and some remaining road works related to the restoration of temporary detours. Substantial performance for this project was achieved on October 18th, 2024. And in the periods, there was an over expenditure number 2 for MD Steel approved in the value of $2,406,306, or 5.61% of the contract. Notwithstanding the over expenditure, we're still on target to hit the approved budget. Since the period ending for this report, the girder coatings, landscaping, and remaining roadworks have been completed. There are several minor odds and ends to clean up on the project, including some sewer televising and completion of some sidewalk banding on Osborne. The value of this work is anticipated to be in the range of $150,000. Given the low cost and risk of outstanding works, we're recommending that this be the final report for this project.
So, just a general question.
Go for it.
Right.
Sure.
When do we achieve substantial completion on a project like this?
It was achieved on October 18th so the next step is to award total performance. That's when all the works are 100% completed. So there's just a couple of minor outstanding items to complete.
And the materiality of that is the majority of the funds can be forwarded once it's substantially completed.
So those milestones typically relate to release of holdback, the builder's lien. So they get a release at the completion of substantial performance, and then again, that's total performance.
Is it, and then Councilor Parvati, public service, substantial completion, is it a certain percentage of budget? Is it a works complete? How is that determination made?
It's based off of builder's lien, but generally it's when
the facility is fit for use. So the majority of the lanes are open, sidewalks open, and that kind of thing.
Okay, I'll leave it at that for now. Is there any documentation on the city website in terms of standardization for project completion, or is it a project by project type of?
So the way completion, it's established based off the Builders Lien Act, so we follow what's in there.
That's provincial legislation.
Okay. And then who's the adjudicator in that? Who makes the final determination of complete, not complete?
So our contract administrators would perform that function.
Okay.
So in this case, the consultant was Stantec.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So the motion probably for this one should be that this be the final report. Somebody want to receive it and move that?
I'll move that.
Move that motion?
Yeah.
I'm gonna give this one to Councillor Allard, since he was asked.
Ah.
All those questions. at the time. Okay, Madam Clerk, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
If I may, I'd just like to thank the project team. I think
Yeah.
it was a successful project, so big shout out to Stantec, MD Steel, and our staff at Public Works.
Looks good. Some
Yeah.
landscaping there, was a little questionable at one point, but on Osborne there, I
There's
saw.
Is
There's
the
still work
art
to do, I heard.
thing done?
Sorry, I'm not familiar with that
Okay.
aspect
I
of
didn't
the
see it.
project.
I didn't
I
see
don't
it.
know what they're doing, so.
Yeah, but I didn't see it when I drove by the other day.
Oh,
I know it's on the City side there,
okay.
but I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I saw some digging holes, so I think they're.
I'm in a highway overpass at
Is that-
Abinichi, Nicanor. I hear that's screwing up my F8 bus these days. How's it going?
Good, so this is the second report for the Pembina Highway overpass at Abinogi Mickinaw. The rehabilitation for the structures for period ending June 30th, 2025. The total project budget is $30,500,000 with expenditures to period ending June 30th, 2025 of $3,109,000 and change. Funding for this project is from two programs, including waterway crossings and grade separations, as well as the regional local program. So works completed in this quarter included completion of detailed design, tendering and award of construction contract. The award for construction was made to MD Steel Construction, which was approved on April 30th of 2025 in the value of $22,374,000. The contractor mobilized to site on May 12th with initial works, including temporary works for the traffic staging, concrete removals on the bridge deck, and demolition of the parks garage. A public information session occurred on May 7th at Canada Inns Fort Garry. So some of the, sorry, one moment. The work is currently on schedule. Project estimate is currently at a class 1. And we're carrying a minor contingency on that project, primarily for structural condition uncertainty and any outstanding utility works that we haven't gotten pricing for yet. Some of the other risk items are related to property. However, this is going well. We've completed either acquisitions or easements from 1845 Pembina and 1895 Pembina. With ongoing negotiations for 2012 Pembina, and then we have made a decision to no longer pursue property at 2005 Pembina.
Why is that?
It was determined to be cost prohibitive and while not ideal, we're able to, so the property was required to maintain a preferred offset from the road to a proposed multi-use path. However, for a short segment, we'll just move the path a little bit closer to the road. So it's not ideal. We'd prefer to have a greater offset, but it's maybe 15 or 20 meters where we have to get a little bit closer to the road. We'll still be able to maintain the full width, just be a little bit more challenging to maintain. We have put some steps in place to monitor opportunities for future property acquisition on it so that we can make that adjustment if the opportunity arises.
That was for 2005?
2005, yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Roddy?
Sure.
Are you done or?
I had a few
Well,
more
finish first.
notes, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
of course.
So the other significant risk item for the project is just confirmation of the strategic infrastructure basket funding from the province. We've currently backstopped that with program contingencies, but we'll need to have that resolved before our next construction season to make sure we don't delay any works. And then just work to date. So this year's work primarily consisted of work on the structure in the southbound lanes as well as the southbound roadworks on north and south of the structure. We also included the renewal of the southbound to westbound ramp and realignment to the eastbound to southbound. We're still on schedule for the works, and we're not anticipating any issues with the budgets at this time.
There's questions.
Councilor Ronnie.
We'll go with Councilor Lukes first.
Oh, sorry.
Well, no, good.
Was Matt first? Matt Allard. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, okay. Feel free, any of these questions, get back to me, I'll like offline, because they may be a little bit detailed, but I understand a class 1 estimate means 5% variance.
-5 plus 10.
-5 plus 10, okay, that still leaves a very big contingency. Do you need all that? Wasn't the contingency in there like 5 million?
So, do you have the exact value? It was 8%. So that would be probably in about that neighborhood. It's ideal to carry an amount of project contingency because otherwise we're searching for money afterwards.
Understand. We're also searching for money.
I understand that as risk items are reduced, so a significant portion of the risk there is related to condition of the structure. So we do as much investigations ahead of possible, but once you get in there, you could uncover some additional items. As those risk items are eliminated, either the work's been completed, then we can start reducing the contingencies accordingly.
I'll rebut only once. So if we have a class 1 estimate and there are expected, I guess, discoveries for the class 1 estimate, is it really a class 1 estimate if we don't know what the scope of work is, or there's potentially new scope of work that we haven't yet discovered? I'm trying to understand the taxonomy of budget contingency, and it seems, relatively complicated.
Your contingency is always related to what's unknown. And you do as much investigations ahead of time to manage that risk. Certainly at least what's feasible to do investigations on to make sure that it's not cost prohibitive just doing the actual investigations. But it's like opening up an old house. Until you start pulling down walls, you don't necessarily understand what's back there. Now, that being said, we're confident that the contingencies will cover unknowns. But until we start getting in there, we just...
Do you remember the St. Vital Bridge where until they really got into the pier work, really didn't know, right? And then like sometimes when you open roads out, or you just don't know.
Well, it's just, I mean,
It's
like logic 101. Like, are the premises wrong? Or is there like a problem with one of the facts? And if the premise is construction of class 1, and if the maximum variation of class 1 is 10%, theoretically that should be the contingency. If there are unknowns, I would question whether or not we're actually at a class 1 estimate.
But our contingency in this case is within the realm of class 1. So it's -5 plus 10 and we're at 8%. So it is in line with...
So you are there?
Yeah.
Okay, well then this is a
It's within that, yeah.
this discussion is then moot. Yeah, thank you, Tom. Yeah. Thank you. All right.
Okay, so,
Sure.
traveling this route every day, twice, 3, 4 times a day, I have to say, it's been incredible. Like there's
Incredibly good.
incredibly good. Yes. I was getting to that, but it has been incredibly positive, right? Like, because it is, you can just well imagine, as you know, it's so much is going on there. There's so many pylons everywhere. Mostly people follow the pylons and never run them over, right? So And I guess I gauge things by the number of complaints I get, and I really haven't had any. Like, I haven't had any, so it's been going really well. I guess my question is, and I really appreciate these kind of monthly updates on the website that you've been doing. I've been very handy for my office and for, just helping people understand what's going on. And today, like, I've been dealing with the McDonald's business. Today, I guess that back lane, or I'm calling it the back lane now. What do you call it? The existing eastbound Abinogi-Mickinaw off-ramp to Chancellor was closed, and now it's scheduled to open today. Do you think that's the case? He's been worked up about that. Maybe I can take that offline.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I don't have that detail at
Sure.
hand, but I can look
Sure.
into it for you.
Okay, and I guess the question is, when do you think the actual connection to University Crescent, when do you think that will open?
I don't have an exact date for you, but we are anticipating for this before the end of this construction season.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just sort of leave it at that, okay? And then I guess the other more of a comment I guess I want to make is two things. I'll call on the northbound Abinogi and get the patching crews out there, because again, like, I know that's slated to get done, northbound Abinogi from Pembina probably to Waverly. It's just falling apart, right? So big chunks are coming out. I try and avoid it, and I don't try not to go northbound a lot, but recently I found myself having to go, and there's just big chunks out of it, but I'll call that one in.
Sorry, can you clarify the location north?
Oh, I guess, sorry, it's not northbound in the map, it's westbound, westbound
Okay.
Abinogi.
Yeah, we do have a forecasted renewal
Yes.
on Abinogi in
Yeah,
27, I believe it
27.
is.
Yeah, but right now it's still falling apart, so I'll call that in. And then the other, it's more of a request, is just that you get the active transportation signs and signage and everything when this section, this whole westbound construction, that when this construction's done this year, that you make sure you've got all your pedestrian and cycling signs active and live and put up. Because it is, with all the vehicles and the people and everything, it's a very busy intersection. And people seem to, half them read the signs, the other half don't, but it helps to have the signs up. So, and any painting that needs to be done. I'm having a bit of a challenge with the painting that's going on right now in the city, because again, one of our top collision intersections, still not fully painted. That's not you, I'll deal with whoever it is on that, but if you could make sure that this is painted up too. Just because it's new and there's new intersections and people can't seem to follow it half the time anyway, so paint helps a little. But yeah, it's just been, and I mean, I've been taking the bus home, catching the wrong bus, going all the way down Pembina. And it's been really good. So kudos to the team and everyone who's working on it.
I'll relay that, thank you.
Yeah, really good. Okay, so if there's no more questions, I'll move the report.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Lukes.
Sure.
Maybe I will ask just one question. I haven't been down there. In fact, I avoided like the plague. I take rapid transit to the
Yeah.
Bomber games and stay away from that whole thing as
Yeah.
much as I can. Transit is blaming, however, the work on Abinogi-Mickinaw for all the bunching up of the F8 bus.
F8 bus, for
The
sure.
F8, some of them, not all of them, most of them end up going through downtown and then come down Henderson Highway. And I've got a picture from Thursday or Friday of last week on Smith Street where they had 4 F8s all bunched up together. What is gonna be happening over this winter in terms of lanes and reductions? Will it be more open over the winter? I'm just, any idea what the winter phase of construction is gonna look like and whether there'll be more lanes open?
I don't have the plan readily at hand, however, I would anticipate that the lanes would be open through winter. I don't offhand see a reason.
I realize
why they
it's
would
the
be
finance
closed.
committee meeting. This is really more of a public works question,
Yeah,
but
my
maybe we'll
understanding
follow
is all the lanes will
Okay.
be open in the
For the winter?
winter.
I believe that's correct.
okay.
That this all will be done, this west side will all be done, and they're not gonna touch the northbound side, the east side.
Okay.
At all in the winter. That's my understanding, unless something new is percolated up.
I can confirm that and get back to
You
you.
don't mind, I appreciate it,
problem.
thank you. Councillor Luke's motion's on the floor, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay, update on replacement of the Fort Garry St. Vital sewer crossing of the Red River.
This is an annual report, being provided by Tim Shanks,
Ah.
Director of Water and Waste.
Yes, hello. Yeah, this is our, this is the second report we did. I believe we did the report last year, in September. To give an update on the financial going on with this, project. So the report before you today has a summary. Really to date, we've, most of the money obviously has been spent on the bypass and, installing the bypass last year and then approving the bypass and the associated engineering, support design costs for that. There's also been the design of the permanent replacement that, was designed, put out to tender and awarded this past summer and is starting right now. They're starting construction right now for the permanent replacements. So those numbers, executive summary, you can see $4.5 million was committed to date for those costs for the design and construction, and $3.2 million had been spent at the time of the report writing. The construction tender that was awarded this summer was awarded in the amount of $26.6 million, so about $27 million. And they're, like I said, they're underway. Big important takeaway is our original target deadline to have the permanent crossing that we were talking about last year. We were hoping to get it done by the end of this calendar year. Because of the time we spent improving the temporary bypass, this work, the tie-in work is very seasonal, so they can't, some of the tunneling can't really be done in the dead of winter, and the tie-ins have to be sensitive to spring flows. So that time we spent last year kind of shifted everything a few months and now has us bumping up against this winter. So the timeline here for this construction actually has completion next spring. So there'll be a bunch of work there this fall on the chambers and some piping shore, but the actual micro tunneling that will happen under the river is going to happen in March. And the idea is that will be finished, pipes installed, and the temporary pipes that are on the bridge right now, those ones would be removed by like beginning of June, end of May. And that would be the final work.
You're saying end of May?
Yeah, end of May, beginning of June.
Okay.
And of course, if we, I hate to say this out loud, but if it was like, flood or something, that might impact some of the schedule. Or mild winter, like we might be able to get ahead of things. So the risks that we identified, obviously the weather I just mentioned, like there can be an impact of that work on the shoreline that we're doing based on the winter. But also the risk of tariffs and supply issues. So we've done a lot of pre-ordering. Some of this work requires like there's some gates and valves and stuff in the infrastructure that's not the chambers that collect this and receive it. So those we've tried to work with the contractor to pre-order things to get ahead of lead time on some of this equipment. That's what we've been trying to do to manage that risk. So yeah, I think that's basically like. I should also say there was some reporting in the media there last week about that construction tender. I just wanted to point out that it's not over budget. Yes, the tender came in higher than our pre-construction estimate, but the budget for this, the work here is part of a program. We have an annual program where we do river crossing monitoring inspections, but we also have an annual program for sewer main renewals and all sorts of sewer related renewals. So like this isn't a pre-tender estimate was based on the best estimates, but it's hard to factor in the specialty equipment. Like the micro tunneling equipment is very unique. There's only a few contractors that do this in Canada. And in fact, the successful contractor here is doing our work on Rutland. So we're lucky to have interested in this work, but specialty contractors, the timing of it, like because we want this done as quickly as possible, we're you know, the bypass is very robust and we've improved it, but, you know, those pipes do impact commuters on Bishop Grant or Abinogi.
They just have to slow
Crossing. Well, they have to slow down, but it's still annoying to customers, and we do want to get to a permitting process system as soon as possible and get away from this temporary structure. So though that timing pressure and the potential weather dependencies does create a bit of a risk for contractors in the bid on this. That's why the estimate and tender alignment. But I just wanted to point out, this is all within our program budgets. It just was a bad look for our estimate to be low.
Councilor Lewis.
So I believe the province gave $20 million for this one. Oh, 10, they gave, oh yeah, right, 10 million, okay. And so right now on the southwest corner, there's a lot of work going on right now. So I guess that is related to some of the chambers.
Yeah, the contractor mobilized end of August, and I mean, this week, you know, there should be a drill rig there. They're gonna be doing some piling from the chambers. But this will be like right down in between the bridges, basically.
Oh.
The laydown area that's closer to Pembina
Mhm.
is related to the previous project talked about here. Road works. So this contractor's laydown area will be very close to the river, like down in between the bridges.
Okay. So all of that work that's occurring now on the south, I'm trying to figure out how that's related to the Abinogi project. It's very close to the river and it's very close to the bridge.
Yeah, but it's between, should be near the, where the active transportation trail crosses down in there. That would be it, if that's what you're referring to, yeah.
That's who's this,
Project.
yeah, it's this project.
There'll also be work on the other side of
Sure.
it. There's a receiving chamber.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, just I had someone questioning me and I wasn't too sure and then I saw the work and I assumed it would be for this project because it's too far really from the other one. Okay, so then you're saying the temporary pipes will be removed optimistically by the end of June next year, beginning of June, okay? And optimistically, work is occurring starting now and will occur over the winter.
Yeah, like this fall, it will be the chamber installation and modifications to the connecting to the existing systems on the shore side.
Yeah.
But the tunneling and tunneling of the casing pipe will be in the spring. In March.
In the spring, okay. Yeah, I find like on some of these big projects, you don't really have a work page on this one, do you? You don't really have a page set up for it or anything? It's just so handy like that, like the last one, you know, they do monthly updates and just when people inquire or just, but like it's, so all these projects that are over 25 million, most of them have pages that say what's going on, right? But there's nothing on this one. So I just gotta call you and email you, so you're now then, okay? You'll get my emails. Okay, okay, that's great. I don't have any more questions. Oh, I just one point, which I can email in. But I know now it's not the city public works department that does it, it's the people that you awarded the contract to kind of babysit or oversee it. They need to regularly get their sweepers out, pick up the pylons, clean it up, and put the pylons back, because it gets very piggy, very terribly messy, dirty. On the bridge, on the deck, yeah. So,
Thanks, Tim.
yeah, I'll move the report. Yeah, we seem to be all, it's a South End day here.
Most carried.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Tim. Financial status and forecast report.
So joining me right now is John Spinell, our corporate controller, walk us through the forecast.
Maybe it should say walk you through the forecast.
Good.
She said walk you through the forecast, but I'm sitting down.
There.
It's.
I
it's-
I love that.
That's why I'm a count, not a comedian. But doesn't stop me trying. Doesn't stop me trying.
bus.
There. So, thank you, Tracy. I'll now take the committee through the highlights of the financial status report for the quarter ending June 30th, 2025. The June report continues to expand on the reporting of the city's financial activity by including utility and SOA information. The June report shows a forecasted operating deficit of $17.7 million in the tax-supported general revenue fund for a 1.2% budget. Utilities show a $61.3 million result, and SOAs have a slight deficit of $3.9 million, and I have more details on these later on. In the efficiency management targets, this report recognizes savings of $44.9 million of the $51.8 million budgeted amount for the year. The bottom half of page 3 and the top half of page 4 provides a good breakout and explanation of the different areas. The remainder of page 4 provides more detail on the $17.7 million deficit in the general revenue fund with a multi-year historical chart of prior quarterly forecasts. And what's interesting is when you take a look at that table, it's pretty much a flat forecast across the, probably the last 20 quarters, except for there's been like the one-off things where we had like a large snowfall in the end of 2022. We had an adjustment in Q1 of 2023 for the police pension. And then last year we had a police headquarter adjustment. So when you factor all those out, the forecast has been pretty consistent throughout the past 5 years. So the rest of page 4 and 5 explain the variance of the general revenue fund. The forecasted deficit is primarily made up of $12.1 million in corporate, and this is due to the $21.2 million in corporate efficiencies being recognized, and this is offset by savings in debt and finance charges. We have a $4.3 million deficit in our property planning, planning, property and development. I just get that wrong, mainly due to lower than expected regulation revenues. $3.1 million in Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Services, mainly due to higher overtime and workers' compensation costs, offset by additional revenues. We have $3 million in a deficit of the asset and project management, and this is due to lower than expected transfers from municipal accommodations. And a $2 million deficit in Winnipeg Police Services, as they met not all of their $5.1 million expenditure target by most of it. So the good news is these deficits are offset by a favorable variance still in public works of $3.3 million. And as mentioned in the last report, this is a result of lower than budgeted costs for snow clearing and ice controls due to favorable weather that we've had in the first part of the year. And we also had a favorable variance in corporate finance of $2.7 million. And this is due to higher earned interest on short-term investments. If you look at Schedule 2, it gives you a really good breakout of the ones that make up the deficit. Go to the top of page 6, you can see the details of the city utilities. Transit is forecasting a $2.1 million deficit. This is due to lower than budgeted revenue, offset by savings in fuel and carbon tax. This is consistent with the Q1 forecast that was presented. Water and waste forecast results are measured against the adopted budget and do not reflect the impact of the solid waste and sewer volume rate changes approved by council on March 27. With the new rates taking effect on April 1st, the sewer utility results in a $49.7 million that are required to fund significant capital investments and maintain operations. The forecast aligns with the rate application approved by council. The result of solid waste utilities is projected at $5.8 million. This amount will be used to offset the prior year's deficit and support ongoing operations. Excuse me. Overall, the water and waste funds are expected to contribute $63.3 million to retained earnings in 2025. Schedule 3 provides a great breakdown of all the utilities and SOEs. So you have that extra detail, as I mentioned at the top of the report. Moving on to page 7, it provides details of the Financial Stabilization Reserve Fund. Schedule 7 of the attached also provides a good summary of the changes in the FSR since the beginning of the year. With the action council took on June 26th to help replenish the FSR, it's able to cover the $17.7 million deficit in the general revenue fund and still have projected balance of $14.7 million at the end of the year. This is still short of the targeted balance of $85.1 million. And the last section of the report is just a cautionary note to highlight some of the external factors beyond the city's control that may impact future forecasts as we get closer to. Thank you, Chair Barone.
That's all done.
Two questions, one, my favorite one, the planning and property development.
Yeah.
I'm still, again, Councilman, did they want, they passed a budget last year where we took public dollars and funded their planning department. So the question really is, there is some advantage of being here for a while. When we did our fee review, it was quite clear in that fee review that this will be a self-funding agency. Now we're gonna looking at 2 years where I'm terrified we're gonna put more public dollars into we've done nothing that I know of looking at fee structures or anything else, where we're gonna now fund developers another $5 million to build fast, build great, whatever they wanna spin it as. It's so, but you have a direction from council that says it's supposed to be self-funding. So how are we still having these deficits and not actually addressing it? When our direction from council is, this is self-funding. So is there any answer to that? Because I don't want to be spending another $5 million. We need that money in other places. I don't want to be giving developers another $5 million because they have low permit fees or no permit fees.
Yeah, so the revenue kind of shortfall, talking with planning, property and development, that has been kind of a historical trend from quite a few years back where the target levels were set quite high. And that anticipated increase in the revenues hasn't materialized. So that's where we're running into the deficit right now.
Should we change those targets then if we never achieve it? I'm sure the targets, rather than pretending that we're getting all this revenue coming in from the department and then using public dollars to back end it, just change the target down.
Yes.
We should, so maybe next budget we'll do that? Okay, well, we'll see.
Next month.
Whatever, I'll
Next
leave
whole year,
that. I'm voicing my disgust at the fact we're using public dollars.
I mean, there's a number of things, where, you know, I could just publicly, I mean, so I'm not, this is not nothing new here, like we overestimate transit fare revenue.
Yes.
We underestimate
Yes.
how much snow clearing is gonna cost.
That's
There's,
right.
there's a handful of things that.
And this is one. So
This is-
yeah, we really gotta get.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that revenue for permits, inspections, all that work is exceeding the revenue. But it's just that we're not hitting the target of revenue that we expect.
Okay, my understanding is the revenues for permits is going, and not for inspections, but for actually permits is going down. Because the rented it mostly couldn't.
Revenue may be down, but it's still exceeding, I believe, the amount.
Okay, I'll go look at the data.
We should we can get back to you.
Yeah, it's okay, because yeah,
My
my,
$1.1 million increase as far as their forecast. So I think last quarter we presented, they were about 4.4 million down. So it's been a slight improvement.
and I'll look at it, and I know they have another report out here, no, public P&D, where we're looking at the variance reports and seeing how that's impacting it. But they said it's too early to tell. That was the report's answer at this time. So I'm not sure if those numbers have been started rolling into this yet. The post housing accelerator fund, where we have to write.
I talked to the
doing that.
department on the Housing Accelerator Fund, so their impact has been reflected in their numbers for this forecast. And they don't feel that it's going to be that large.
To the T&D, we don't have the information for the variance report there. We have enough information for the department to make that conclusion. We said we don't have enough information yet because we just started this, so we can't give you a variance report on how the impact, that's the LDR. That's why I was in there. So you can't give us that information, but you're telling me today, but we can give you the information that the revenues are fine. We can't incorporate that into this report. So not in this report, we can't incorporate the housing accelerator fund impacts because we don't know yet, because we don't know the impact. But in this report, we do know the impact and we can record it. Am I missing something?
There's a forecast put together by the manager of finance for planning, property and development. It has been included in this report and get you the details.
Yeah, because then I'll have to ask P&D why it's not the other report. That's fair. And is it time, and this is more, I guess, to our chair, is it time to separate the fiscal stabilization, and we even call it the fiscal stabilization reserve fund? Well, again, this is a new word for me from my days, being an old timer. The fiscal stabilization reserve wasn't a general purpose reserve. Now I know we combined that during COVID, and then we just went there like a party and just drained it. How are we ever going to get our fiscal stabilization reserve back up if we're using it as a general revenue reserve?
We have to create operating surpluses. So that is something that we're struggling with. But that's the way that that'll ultimately be funded is operating surpluses.
Is there any advantage of separating the two out again? So when we put money in the fiscal stabilization, reserve, I know I got a little upset when we took our money out of the BRT. I understood why and moved that other neighborhood over there to put in the fiscal stabilization reserve, which I would have been okay. And that's how we go, oh, this is great, we're putting the fiscal stabilization, but we're not. We're putting the general purpose reserve. Because that's what we use for, because we're gonna drain that reserve off, I guarantee, during the budget time. Maybe I'm wrong, I'll wait and see, but we're gonna be dipping into that, and we always have the last couple of years. So is there, I'm not sure, maybe you can tell me, how are we gonna increase our fiscal stabilization reserve if we're gonna constantly using the general purpose reserve? Should not they two be separated again finally, go back to the way it was? So when we say we're putting money in fiscal stabilization, it isn't just making people happy. Say, oh, that's great, because you say I'm putting this money into a general purpose reserve, public and politicians will see that a little bit differently. So is it time to separate these back out?
Right now, we need to be able to use our natural resources as nimbly as possible as we navigate, our multi-year budget and going into the next multi-year budget. So, adding restrictions on funds in a time when we need less restrictions is not what I'm thinking at the moment.
Whether it's
That would
COVID,
be-
Snowmageddon year or whatever, I mean, we need,
Yeah.
having a reserve is responsible.
Able to
thing do,
nimbly
so.
use resources as
And
things
two
come up,
different
I
reserve-
think
I don't
is.
disagree with you, reserve, the general purpose reserve, and the
Yeah.
fiscal stability. But my point is, the fiscal stabilization reserve is very specific, and it was, we can never touch it. On purpose, because before we did these changes, because it has to be something significant. Now, because we negotiated QB settlement quite high, fine with me, we use the fiscal stabilization reserve to pay that off. Well, that's not the fiscal stabilization reserve. That's just a budgetary choice we made, that with the general purpose reserve. So I'm not sure, my concern right now, bottom line, and I'm sure you share it, is that we don't have a fiscal stabilization reserve. So if something major happens in the city, we have nothing to rely on. And I don't see how we're ever gonna get our fiscal stabilization reserve on this track. We both have a plan the year after, still don't know what our plan is. We put money, we take out, that's our plan so far. But I don't see how we're getting to $80 million when we're bouncing around 10, take out 8, we leave with 2, maybe if we're lucky. So I'm very, points of my concerns that I am very nervous. I probably won't be here when if it hopefully doesn't happen. But when something disastrous does happen, such as an assessment issue, or who knows what, climate change, big massive issue, something like that, we're not gonna have anything. We didn't set up our fiscal stabilization reserve, and then that money will have to be borne by the taxpayer. Quite a bit, that's why we set it up back in the day. So I voice my concerns, you know what my concerns on this are. Jeff knows my concerns are this are. So I just want to voice, I'm not seeing any progress here in the actual plan to replenish the FSR. And so I'm not sure how, I guess, promises in mind, because it's supposed to be, it's regulatory, so we have to do it. So I am concerned, as we all are. Okay, fair enough, thanks. I gave enough, that's enough answers, thanks.
Comments, somebody ready to move this?
Sure.
Thanks, Councilor Orlico, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. And thanks, John.
Okay.
We'll move over to.
Keep up the comedy, looks good. Yeah. Okay, looks good.
That's right up my alley. Yeah.
See about the comedy club. Be wearing a wig, say eyes. Talking to incognito.
Nah. Awesome.
So, Paul Becca, one of our economists, and Matt Hedberg are joining us now to give us an update on tariffs. And then following that, I'll just give you a quick financial update on where we're at so far.
Perfect, great. Yeah. Perfect, thank you very much. Travis. Hey, Bob.
Good morning, councillors. Today I think is my third update. I think last time I was here was in April last year, so a lot has happened and not since then, so here to provide a bit more of a what's happened as the tariffs have actually been in place. So today we're going to cover two topics. First, broad overview of tariff policies. There's been a lot of announcements, pullbacks, but let's try to just cover some of the broad pieces of what is in place. And now that we've got about 6-7 months of data to actually start diving into what has this tariff impacts actually been for Winnipeg's economy, and get into some of the data side as well. But just again, we're working at a city level, not a lot of actual published data at the city level, so we're making assumptions along the way. Starting off on the tariff policy front for the US, there's more action there. So starting from most recent and going back, the US dropped the $800 de minimis limits exemption. So before, if you were sending a product to the United States that was less than $800, you weren't tariffed. Now that's fully tariffed at whatever that product will be. There is a cumulative 35% countervailing and anti-dumping duties on Canadian lumber. So those two pieces that mixed in both happened very shortly after each other in mid-August. Previously, that was a cumulative amount of 14.5%.
Okay, so let me ask a question. So
Yes.
what does that mean? That
Yeah.
means if we're building a building out of lumber, it's 35% more?
No, so that's for Canadian lumber going to the United States.
Got it,
So this is all of our products going there.
got it.
35% tariff on non-Canada US Mexico agreement, CUSMA, compliant exports. So previously, as part of this, all started out was 25%. Sorry, there's an error there. It should be read 25. So it was up 10% beginning of August. 50% tariff on aluminum steel, first announced June 4th, or effective June 4th, being at 25% back in March. And then copper products were also added. There was a very brief period where copper ores and the actual really raw material was put in there. And then the Americans realized, wait, we don't really produce that, so we need that from others. So they pulled back very quickly. 25% tariff on non-US content of CUSMA compliant motor vehicles. That's not new. It was back in April. And then 10% tariff on non-CUSMA compliant potash and energy products back in April. Nothing new there. On the Canadian front, we did 2 rounds of tariffs. I think accumulated about 80 billion back then, which was that piece. So we pulled that back on 25% tariff. So they've now said that's about 44 billion knocked out. Some amount items that we are now tariffing has gone down from a little over 1,800 to a little over 300. That was effective September 1st. So these are things now that would then potentially have an impact on stuff we're purchasing from the United States. So lower tariffs. That's mostly seen as a bit of a negotiation tool to try and move forward to get the Americans to some broader agreement down the road. And then what's still in place, we kept is 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum, which we first put in March 13th, and US content of CUSMA compliant automobiles, which we first put in April 9th, in response to their tariffs that put in place there on April 2nd.
So if we're buying American steel versus Canadian steel, it's 25% more.
Yeah. Unless there's some minutia in the rules that you actually start digging into this stuff, but effectively, yes.
So okay.
Another broader question, we go back to that.
Sure.
I'm having debates with people, but we're all kind of lay people, so we understand. I'm sure. So the federal government decided to remove compliant CUSMA compliant two different names for it, straight. Compliant, we're gonna remove those. And so I said, well, what about the US? Are they removing theirs? And someone told me, well, there is none. The US is not doing that. I go, well, lumber, we have an arbitration system. But is the US tariffs, like we're putting tariffs on compliant, CUSMA compliant items?
The only thing where they're targeting on CUSMA compliant outside of steel and aluminum and some copper is autos. And it's the Canadian and Mexican content of autos in the United
So
States.
that's kind of, so it's just those 4.
Yeah.
So they're all based, but all the other small stuff.
Yeah, and then even within, it's not like so for an industry, it's not like, okay, you're covered under, says under CUSMA, this product, free trade. That's not how it works. You actually have to submit paperwork to demonstrate you've got content.
Right.
Yeah, so that's where it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
But broadly speaking, and we're gonna see in some of the next slides, is the effective tariff rate and other impacts are actually quite small, probably relative to other countries.
So are we seeing, when we buy, a Ford F-150 or a Dodge Ram, there's US components in it, has the price of, from a year ago, year over year, they were already going up, through COVID.
Yeah.
Have they gone up year over year on a US vehicle? Or sorry, what vehicle that, has, they're all integrated, there's parts in from Canada, parts in from Mexico.
Holding all else equal, yes, the tariffs on those increase on costs.
Okay,
Yeah. So getting into some of the actual data that we can see for the Winnipeg Economic Region, just a quick caveat, we're using US Census Bureau data, StatsCan data, and then our own Winnipeg GDP numbers to all mesh this together to give an estimate. So the first piece here is to show what percentage of the dollar value of exports from Winnipeg to the United States is entering the US duty-free. And what we see is in the previous year, for 24, you're averaging at around 96%. It's bounced around the mid 90s. And then right as tariff policies start to be announced in January and February, that shot up. That would be also relate to our export volumes went up, and you can see it. We'll see that in the next chart. And then as these policies went into effect, the dollar value of duty-free goods going in fell. But we're sitting around 90% right now. We're about a percentage point, 2 percentage points above Canada. So we're pretty close. This is, we're calling it duty-free. If you went right in the data and said we're pulling CUSMA compliant, there's actually, it's much lower, but that's because there's a whole bunch of stuff that is actually CUSMA compliant, but gets classified in another part of the data. So more broadly, what do we care about? Well, duties and the impact on trade flows.
Most of the stuff is.
Just give us a little example of what wouldn't see.
So jumping ahead, the last slide, we do have industries of where we are estimating the biggest impacts.
Okay.
Next slide here on the left-hand side is showing an estimate for the Winnipeg Economic Region, which for a reminder is Winnipeg plus Headingley, of what our dollar value of exports, this is unadjusted for inflation, just pure sales values. So in the gold is Winnipeg sending to the US, and then the gray is to non-US markets, international markets. And that, as we see, again, to what I brought up earlier, in January, February, things really ran up. Companies were really trying to get their goods into the United States before the tariffs were going to kick in. And then we see a decline here beginning really in the second quarter. So on a year-to-date basis, our total nominal trade is down 7.8%. That's probably going to continue to decline as we add more months into the year, just because this is going to have somewhat of a negative impact on our trade.
I don't think that's as bad as everybody had thought. Sure. I don't think it's as bad as everybody had thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
It's still not insignificant.
Yeah. And then on the effective tariff rate front, which they give is like, what's the tax rate paid on all these goods? Right now in July, it's sitting at 3%. That's going to go up a bit, in part because of some of the policies that were announced in August that will then impact us. But again, this is not, when you think of 25% or 35% tariff on CUSMA or non-CUSMA compliant, this is a heck of a lot lower as to what's actually hitting the overall economy. Not to say that there aren't certain industries that are experiencing pain. It's targeted, is how it's showing up. It's not broad-based. And then finally, Councillor Luce, to your question, where is this happening? So here we've got a bit of a busy table. What we've done is we've ranked the top 10 industries where we're estimating what we think the amount dollar value of tariffs paid by that, or would have been paid by the importer for that corresponding industry. So number one is aerospace products and product and parts manufacturing, which actually that trade value is up this year relative to last. So it's estimated that for the exports that Winnipeg sent to the United States, the importer would have paid $3.2 million. And then from there, machinery manufacturing, which that's a broad category, but it's going to include things like ag manufacturing at 2.6 million. And then to round up top three, primary metal manufacturing at 1.9 million. To then move over, yes, we talked about an effective tariff rate. Right at the bottom, we see all industries at 2.9%. When you actually start looking at some of these industries, that effective tariff rate, that effective tax rate is really quite broad. So aerospace, we're looking at 9.1, machinery manufacturing about 4, Primary metal manufacturing, 29.5, and that's because of the metals that are being targeted in a stronger manner. Then next one is share of total tariffs paid. So how much of this payment is concentrated amongst these industries? These top 10 industries account for 94% of total tariffs paid that are estimated amongst the economy. So again, this is really limited to what we're seeing in these 10 industries, and then the rest are doing okay. Maybe because they're domestic service providers or whatever else.
This is a 1 month snapshot.
This is a 1 month snapshot. This reason to give it is stuff that was happening in July. Good question. Different than June, different than May. And so trying to say this is where we're at. The August data, when that comes out in October, that'll give us probably a bit of a different perspective. I don't expect it to change that much from a composition standpoint. Dollar values might move, effective tariff rates will move, but the ranking probably not that much. And then finally, to put it into further perspective, on the far right is their share of GDP. Let's get this out of the way. There we go. Estimated for the 2024.
So the September 1st reduction of the tariffs, that should probably come way down. So this is what Winnipeg businesses are paying in tariffs.
No, this is what the US would be paying, so this is how impacting our exports to the United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
As of September 1st, when big businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Counter vehicle.
Right.
Okay, well,
So-
doom and gloomy as we thought.
Yes. So point being, I'll just bring you to the top 10 on the bottom right. These industries account for about 7.5% of Winnipeg's GDP estimated in 24. So it's, not insignificant, but we're not talking 20,
So I think the
40%.
overall message here is it's not as bad as everybody had thought, but it's still a lot of industries. It's going to continue to be hard on us.
That's it.
So I guess the next, besides, we never know how the president wakes up in the morning that he's thinking. But Kuzma, when is that process expected to be concluded?
I believe Kuzma's up for renegotiation in 26. So next year,
So it starts, probably already started.
probably already started. Yeah.
Yeah, he had talked about having something, Prime Minister Carney talked about an agreement in July, right? Something.
Yeah.
Like that.
And
I mean, it's a moving target. right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's-
Okay, so sometime next year, we should know if we're totally getting hosed or not on that one.
Yeah, negotiations are on.
So we should know next year.
Yes, maybe.
Any questions? Yeah.
Update on what's actually happened.
All right.
Yes.
City.
All right.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I have some real numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been tracking the direct tariffs paid so far, and year to date to the end of August, we have paid $68,000, so a very small amount compared to what we were thinking that might be. Of which 23,000 is operating and the rest of it is capital. Of the operating, that's spread across the departments of transit, water and waste, and fleet management. So we are seeing parts and inventory coming up from the US for fleet vehicles, and transit vehicles are having tariff amounts attached to those. And then on the capital side, it's split about 50-50 again with fleet and public works. And so fleet would be vehicles that are being purchased, and public works are equipment and materials coming up from US. So it is kind of affecting us where we thought it might affect us, and but the amounts are manageable. We have also been meeting with New Flyer to talk about challenges generally that they're facing, and they're currently experiencing tariff pressures, especially. So now we have a new order of 24 buses that have been that are currently in the works. They have a number of while the manufacturer is here and the final assembly is here, we're the first city to have our buses in that new model. But there are still component parts coming up from the US. So they're expecting tariff pressures to the realm of 1 to 2% of total bus costs. So on a $1 million bus, it'd be about $100,000 in tariff pressures. So we're going to continue to keep talking to them about that. 1%. 1 to 2%. Oh, sorry. So that's less than 100,000. That's 10,000.
Well, I'm thinking.
Yeah,
closer to 10,
mathematically.
By a Cummins engine, that's gonna be a large component. of the
Yeah,
cost.
no, so they've done quite a bit of it's around 1.4%. They're saying that was the draft number. But they are documenting everything and they're having independent they're having an accounting firm come and independently verify that. So it's possible they may be also eligible for relief from the federal government. So we are working with them on that just to make sure that collectively no one's hearing the read of that. No numbers. Stay tuned.
Helpful, but thank you. That's why we wanted to do this.
Yeah,
Because we're all shocked when this happened
Unsure, yeah.
and unsure what happened. So I think this hopefully will help the public realize, and something, keep an eye on it, but the world's not ending today. So that's good.
Thanks so much. Move this. Protocol, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried. Send adjournment. Councillor Lukes nodded.
Adjourn.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried. Thank you very much, everybody.